Hi everyone, so in this video we're going to get as far as being able to spawn walls and floors and place them into the map, and then we'll deal with snapping things together in the next video. So we want to create what's called a player controller, which is a type of blueprint which is meant to handle all player input, so pads, keyboards, mouse, everything like that. So here we go, right click, blueprint class, and it's going to be a player controller this time. And just call this something like building underscore PC. Open that. Ignore the viewport, we don't need to do anything here, just go straight to event graph, and then this is where we're going to wire up all of the input actions that we created in the last video. So first of all, right click, and if you remember we created two input actions called toggle build wall and toggle build floor. Well, they will now show up in here, or any blueprint for that matter. So I'll put both of those in, toggle build wall, and then right click again, toggle build floor. So when we press one of these, I think it was the 1 and 2 keys we found these two, what I want to do first of all is set a variable to say which class is it we want to build. So add a new variable, call this build class, and then change its type to be of type build base, which was, if you remember, that's the base class that floor and wall inherit from. Okay, so drag that into the blueprint then as a set, and say that when the toggle build wall button gets pressed, it is a wall that we want to build, a wall class. And when, I'll just copy and paste this, when the toggle build floor button gets pressed, it is a floor. So what happens next? Well, these two are both going to call the same function, which basically either, if we are trying to build something already, it assumes that we're toggling back out of building mode and just destroys wherever it was. If we're not building, then it will spawn either a wall or a floor piece for us. So we'll create that function now. So over on the middle left here, add a new function, and we'll call this, what should we call it? Toggle building new part. Okay, and then it will have automatically put us inside that function. So I'm just going to pop back to the event graph a second, just so I can see how this will be wired up, which is like this. So we say we either want to build a wall or a floor, we set a variable to say which one it was, and then we call some function, this one, toggle building new part. Now what this needs to do, because it's a toggle, is first of all ask, are we already building something or not? Now the way we're going to do this is with a branch, which is basically Unreal's version of if statements. I mean, you must have seen these if you've done much Unreal. Just so you know, you use branches quite often, and you might not want to go in the menu each time, type branch. So the shortcut for this is just hold B, left click. Okay. Now what do we want here? We want to know, true or false, are we already building something? So the fastest way to do this is going to be right click here where it says condition, promote to variable. Make sure you don't click promote to local variable, it's just promote to variable, and call that new variable is building question mark, or are we building, or something like that. Now why did I say make sure it's a variable, not a local variable? Local variables are only accessible to this particular function, so every function you make can have its own list of local variables, whereas ordinary non-local variables, the ones that are just called variables here, they're accessible all through the blueprint, which is what we want for this. Okay, so we'll follow this as it would happen in order. So the first time we toggle building, the first time this gets called, we're not going to be already building something. So what do we want to do? Well, first of all, we'll set this variable is building to be true. So the next time we run the same function, it will go down the opposite branch. Then what should we do? We're going to need to spawn an actor of whichever class it is we're trying to build. So spawn actor from class. Which class is it going to be though? Well, it's going to be whichever we've got stored in this build class variable that we just created. Now one thing you'll find, if you try and compile this, it will complain, saying that something has to be plugged into spawn transform, otherwise it doesn't know where to spawn something. We're going to deal with positioning later on, so for now, just to stop it complaining, right click on spawn transform and just press split struct pin, and that will just give location, rotation and scale some default values, and then it will build no problem. We're going to need to keep hold of the thing that we just spawned. So what's happened here is an actor has just been spawned of whichever class we wanted, wall or floor, and then it will get returned to us here. We're going to want to store this in a variable so that we can access it from elsewhere, like when we're trying to position it. So right click here on return value, promote to variable, again normal variable so we can access it all over the blueprint, and call this something like item being built. Now what we need to do is disable the collision on this, because when we're still dragging items around and we haven't yet clicked to position them, we don't want them to be colliding with other objects and causing problems. So from here, off of item being built, do a get mesh. It should be right down the bottom. Yeah. If you called your static mesh something else, then that name will be there. I called mine mesh. This is the mesh that was in build base. And from here, do a set collision enabled. Slightly confusing in names. It makes it sound as though this node is going to enable collision on this mesh, when really what it does is asks you, what do you want the collision to be like? And we can say no collision. Okay, so what's happened so far? We tried to build a new wall or floor. If we were not already building, we set a flag to say we are building, spawned wherever it was we wanted, stored a reference to it, and then just switched off its collision. Okay, good. Now going the other way, if we press to build the wall or floor again, and we were already building something, then we're assuming that we're trying to toggle back out of build mode again. So what we're going to do is, first of all, clear this is building flag. So again, the next time we run this function, it will go down the opposite path, which it's going to work as a toggle. And then we just want to destroy the thing that we were building, but without placing it. So if I drag item being built in again, get, we can then just say destroy, destroy actor. That's it. And there we go. So just to recap this, we start building something. If we weren't already, we spawn it and switch to collision off. If we were already trying to build something, we just destroy it and assume we're toggling back out. Okay, so let's compile, save. Okay, so assuming we've gone down this branch and we've spawned a new wall or floor, we now need to position it somewhere. So back in the event graph, and we're going to do this from the tick function. Now tick, as you may remember, is a function that gets called on every single frame. So if you want something to happen every frame, tick is a good place to put it. If we're moving the cursor around, like moving our crosshair around, trying to position something, then we need its position to update every frame. So this is where we'll do it. So first of all, we need to ask, are we actually building something? So branch, wire this up, and then just check what this is building variable is saying. So in the event that we're not trying to build anything, we don't need to do anything here. Oh, one thing I should have checked. If you click on is building, make sure that the default value is false. So yeah, highlight the is building variable, untick this, otherwise it will start true and cause problems. If you can't see this default value here, you'll need to press compile and then it will show up. In fact, it will say please compile the blueprint or something like that instead of showing you that. Okay, so we are trying to build something. We now need to position it somewhere, so we may as well make a function for this. So over on the middle left again, add a new function and call this one position build item or build part, whichever you want to call that. And again, just nip back to the event graph and wire this up. So that is going to go there. Now, how is this going to work? Well, what we need to do is work out, let's just play the game so you can see, what is the camera looking at? So if you were to trace a line straight from where the camera is sitting, like forwards the way the camera is looking, what will it hit? So here you assume it would hit the wall, here it would hit the floor, here it would be shooting off into the sky. But we need to do what's called a line trace to work out what that is. So in here, add in a line trace for objects. If you've not used traces before, I'll just go over what this does. So imagine you're firing a laser beam from some position, start, towards another position, end. And all you're interested in is, does that laser beam hit something along the way? And if it does hit something, what is it? So what we want to do, we want to start this beam from where the camera is, and some distance in front of the camera the way the camera's facing, and then if we hit something, we want to try and position our build object there. So how do we know where the camera is? Well, first of all, the camera is, and there are a number of ways of accessing this actually, but the way I'm going to do it is by saying get the player's character, so get player character. And what we need this as is our type of character, the type of character we're using, which if you look, our character is a third-person character. That's the type of blueprint it is. So back in here, we need to go cast to, and one of the options will be third-person character. The reason you do this is you might have a game with a dozen different types of character in. So when you say get player character, you have to cast it to the specific type you're actually interested in. Now from the character, we can do a get camera. Now be careful, it's not this one, get camera view at the top. If you start typing get camera, scroll all the way down, it will be this one here, get follow camera. I'm assuming that follow camera because that's what it's called in the character blueprint. Now from there we can ask where is this camera. So from here, get world location. And that's our starting point. So for firing our little laser beam to see if we hit something, which is what a line trace is, remember, really, we're starting where the camera is. Now where we want to end is some distance in front of the camera, the way that, like going forwards the way the camera is pointing. Now one handy thing you've got in Unreal, all actors can do this by the way, is you can ask for something called the forward vector. If you just type forward, yeah, get forward vector. Forward vector is, it's what it actually is the orientation of the actor's local x-axis, but what you can think of it is which way is this thing pointing. So for the character themselves, the player character, it will be the way that they're walking normally, the way that the mesh is pointing. For the camera, it will be the direction the camera is looking in. But this is a very short vector, it's only like of length 1, so if we said fire from here to here, we'd start where the camera is, fire a beam 1 centimeter in front of it and then stop. So what we want to do is make this vector a lot longer. So if we say multiply by a float and put just some large number in here, it doesn't matter, I'm going to put 20,000 in. So what we've got here is a vector which is oriented the way that the camera is pointing with length 20,000. So it will go on for 20,000 centimeters. What we want to do then is add this onto the camera's location. So vector plus vector. And then this is what we wire into end. So let's just recap what's going on here. We're essentially firing a line trace from where the camera is, so camera get world location, to a location which is the camera's location plus the way the camera is facing times 20,000. So 20,000 centimeters the way the camera is facing, starting from where the camera is. That should be enough. Right, so the next thing is, what types of objects is this line trace allowed to hit? So basically, you've got this object types pin here. If I drag away from that, press make array, you should do this as well. You can specify as an array what types of things do you want to be hit, and it will ignore everything else. Now we only want the one type of thing, so remove any extra pins you've made. What do we want to hit? Well, really we want to add our own type of object here, what's called an object channel. And on this object channel we will just place things that we want to be able to build on. So for example, there's this floor, the floor that's already there, and then there's everything that we build. So we want to be able to build on the floor and our walls and floors and nothing else. So it won't try and build on top of, let's say, the character's mesh or something else. Bits of the scenery maybe if this is a more fleshed out game. So to make our own object channel, you want to go to Edit, Project Settings, and then under the Engine section you want to find Collision. And then here you can see there's an area here, object channels. It says we can have up to 18 custom channels for like different things. So click new object channel and call this something like buildable channel. Accept. And then what we want to do is put the floor on that buildable channel. Now one thing I've found with this is you may need to do a save all before that channel will show up as something you can use. So save all. Select the floor, scroll down, and in the floor's collision settings it will say collision presets, something default or world static or something like that. Change that to custom, and then in object type, and it's like this should have our channel on, but it doesn't always show up, so I'm going to try that again. Deselect the floor, save all, select the floor, try that again. Yeah, buildable channel. I don't know why that doesn't always show up. Anyway, never mind. So now the floor is on the buildable channel object channel. So back in here, and it doesn't show up view either. Okay, compile. I'm not sure why we don't see that. Let me just try closing that player controller and reopening it. Yeah, okay. Now it's there, buildable channel. Weird. Anyway, so now what we're seeing is this line trace can only return a hit against anything on that channel, which at the moment is only the floor. What we should do is go into our build base, which was this, where we set up saying we have a mesh. Select that mesh and make it so that the mesh itself is also on the buildable buildable channel. So under collision presets, change it to custom, and then in here find buildable channel. It showed up for once. Well, there you go. Okay, cool. So what do we want to do now? Well, what we want to say first of all, this will be at the point where we can test it in a bit, so we'll see if what we've done so far is working. We want to say if there was a hit, so if the trace did hit something, so branch, if we hit something, position whatever we're trying to build at that location. How do we know whether we've hit something? Well, you'll see here from the line trace you've got a pin out hit. If you drag a line away from there and put a break hit result, you'll get this quite a lot of information actually. So this top one, blocking hit, is true or false. Did we hit something? So that's what we're interested in here. Then if we did hit something, it can tell you anything you want to know about the hit. So where was the hit, which is what we're interested in, but also what actor was hit, what physical material was it, metal, wood, something like that, all kinds of stuff. So all I want to do is say, take the item that we're building at the moment, which remember we stored it in this item being built variable. So get that, and then do a set actor location, like that. And the location is going to be wherever the hit location was. There you go. Now, one thing, we'll test this, but I'll show you what. Before we can test it, we need to tell Unreal to use this player controller class rather than the one it started with. So go back to the main window. The way we do this is we create our own game mode. So a game mode is where you can say, use this character class, use this player controller class, and half a dozen other things. So right click here, new blueprint class, and it's a game mode base, and I'm going to call this one just building _GM, so building game mode. If you open this up, over here on the right, see, you can say what player controller class we want. So this is the bit we're interested in. We're using our building PC that we've just been working on. If we'd got our own character, we'd put that here where it's got default pawn class, and if we had got our own heads-up display, we'd put it in here. We don't need to change anything else. The last thing we do need to do is tell the engine to use this game mode that we've just been building this. So back in project settings, go to maps and modes under project, and you'll have default game mode. It should at the moment say third-person game mode, which is the one that the template creates. Change that to building GM, or whatever you just called the one we made, and play. And they see if I press 1, it will try to start building a wall, and wherever I'm looking at the floor, wherever that line trace hits the floor, remember, from the camera straight forwards, is where it's positioning it. Now you'll notice something weird happens if we're not looking at the floor. It will try and... Actually, it didn't. I was expecting that, trying to snap this back to the middle. I'm not sure why it didn't. Okay, but let's see if our toggles are working. So press 1 again so pressing 1 again has just destroyed that wall. 2 will start building a floor. Position it wherever I'm looking, and then press 2 again to stop building it. Okay, so if I just press escape to get back out of here, the next thing we're going to want to do is make it so that we can press left mouse to snap the part into place. So we'll do that next. Okay, so back here in the player controller, I want to wire up 2 more of our inputs. There's the left clicking to place the item that we're positioning at the moment, and there's holding R to rotate it. So if you remember, and we'll start with left clicking, but we set up a place build item input bound to left mouse. So In here, the player controller, we can say place build item. Now what do we want to do when left mouse is clicked? Well, all I want to do really is set a Boolean flag saying that this has happened. So add a new variable, call it clicked to place, question mark, get that right, and set it so that when this input event fires, so the player clicks, that gets set to true. Compile and just make sure that that starts off as false. Then what we're going to do over here in tick, so remember tick is every frame, we'll check the value of that. So we'll say, after we've done this position item where the line trace said to put it, have another branch and check this clicked to place. If this is true, that means left mouse has been clicked. What we want to do is first of all clear that flag again so we don't try and place again on the next frame. So click to place, set back to false, so this will only happen once, and then we'll have to click again to reset it to true. And we want to basically not only stop moving the item around that we've got attached to, not attached to, but that's kind of following the cameras where the camera's looking at the moment, but we want to spawn another one. So if we click to put a floor down or a wall, we don't have to press the keys on the keyboard to start a new one, it just does it for us. If you think about it, we already have, we go inside toggle building new part, this code which spawns a new whatever it was, stores it in a variable for us, and switches off its collision. So really, we want to do all this again. So the spawn actor with build class, this set, and then this turning off the collision on the mesh. Now, instead of copying and pasting this up into the event graph, what I'm going to do is make sure I've got all of that selected. So those and that, right click, and we'll turn this into its own like sub function basically. So collapse the function and call this something like spawn build item. Okay, so leave this here so it still happens in this function as if it was, this will work exactly the same. Whether that's in its own function or whether it's all laid out how it was, it makes no difference. So that will still happen, but it means up in the event graph over here, we can grab hold of that spawn build item and do it again here. So think about what you'll see it get tested in a minute. So we click to place something, call this spawns a brand new item, sets that as item being built, so that will be the thing, this new item will be the thing that's being moved around next frame. So back up here, we want to do something else first. Before we spawn the next thing, we want to switch collision back on the item that we're moving around at the moment. So before we basically override with the next thing, do a get mesh, and then from the mesh it is set collision enabled, and that wants to be just this bottom one, collision enabled, like that. So let's test this out. So compile, save, play. So if I press 2 to start placing a floor and I click, see, every time I left click, it's positioning a new one. I'm not sure why I get these weird wavy lines on the surface of things. I think it's because the floor item is so close to the actual floor, some kind of weird graphics error. Anyway, we'll come on to that in a sec. So I press 2 to toggle out of that, press 1 to start building walls. Exactly the same thing happens. Like every time I click, it will stamp one down in the level. Okay. So next thing, escape to get out of here. There's rotating. So we've already set up a input for this, rotate part. Yeah, so let's get hold of that. Rotate part under action events. And what we want to do here, because the thing is, if you don't want to have to keep on pressing R like over and over and over again, just keep rotating the thing. We want to be able to rotate by holding down R. The problem with that is this will only fire once on the frame that we press R. It won't keep firing every frame it's held down. But what we can do is, similar to this, set a Boolean flag saying something like should rotate part to true when this happens, and then set it back to false when that key is released. So that's what we'll do. So add a new boolean, should rotate part, question mark, set that to true here. There we go. And set that to false, so copy paste, Control C, Control V here. And compile and make sure that that starts off as false. So should rotate part wants to begin at false, otherwise the first thing we try and place will be spinning. So where are we going to do this rotation? Okay, so we've got this position build item function here, the one with all the line tracing in. So here what we do, we set the location of the thing that we're doing at the moment. So if we also go set actor rotation, no, it won't be, will it? It will be add world rotation. Let me see. Add actor world rotation. That's it. And we don't want to do that no matter what. We want to say, let's straighten this up a bit. We want to say if that should rotate is true, then do this. So again, branch. So B, click. Wire this up. If should rotate part is true, add on some rotation in Z. The Z rotation is rotating around the vertical axis. So this is one of the reasons I wanted the origin of the part, the origin of the floor to be in its center. If you remember last video, we don't want to add on much, just 0.5. If you wanted to do this properly, you'd take into account the frame rate and all that kind of stuff, but this will work for now. So after we've changed the location of the thing we're positioning, check if should rotate part is true. If it is, add on some Z rotation. So compile, save, play. Let's test this out. So if I press 1 to build a wall, hold R, that will start to now spin around. And then when I stamp it down, it will keep that orientation. Yep. The new one doesn't have the same orientation, but we'll deal with that when we come on to snapping. Same should work for floors. So if I start building a floor, hold R, click. Okay, so this all works. The next thing then, next video, I think we'll leave this one here. The next thing we'll do is, well, a short one where we sort out the crosshair in the center to make things easier for us. And while we're at it, we'll sort out the materials on the wall and floor to make them look like floorboards and bricks, respectively. Okay, so see you next time.